Okay.
F Paul, if you say so.
Paul. What's your beauty tip, F. Paul? Okay, ready?
Yeah, Screaming Divas, hello.
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 Hello, Paul. We can't say, there you are, handsome bugger. Cheers.
Cheers.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. How about you?
Well, considering the circumstances.
Exactly. You look great, though.
Well, it's it's a new hairstyle.
Mm.
Yeah.
The head start on you.
Oh, I know. Who was saying that to me? Who's the one? Oh, Christina Scheppelmann. She said, "Oh, embrace it, Sandra." And I said, "No,
Not yet.
This is Carrie, by the way.
Hi.
Carrie F. Paul.
You.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for joining us.
I'm switching gallery view so I can see you both.
Oh, great.
And what are you drinking?
drinking?
Yeah.
I am drinking a Maker's Mark and ginger ale with a wedge of lime.
Delicious.
Ooh, is that
And you, ladies?
Carrie? What are we drinking?
Well, since you're in New York, I had to go with Brooklyn Gin.
It is one of our favorites, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Delicious.
Oh, nice.
I'm feeling fruity today. I don't know. It's a gray, rainy day here. It's just dismal. It is.
It's actually been pretty good here today. Not too bad, but there've been a run of sort of Charlotte Bronte type days in the past.
It's
sad.
Depression upon depression for us here. It's bad enough, the pandemic, and then we had a polar vortex in May, something we've never had before.
Really?
No, we had snow up until what, Carrie, 2 weeks ago?
You did.
Yeah.
Now, Carrie, where are you?
I'm in Nashville.
Oh, how's the weather there?
Honestly, it was supposed to be rainy and gross all week, and it's been beautiful all day today. We've had sunshine with a little bit of gray, but
Well, that's
not bad.
Now, did Sandra tell you were in the last opera performance I saw before I went into quarantine?
I did not.
I'm slightly horrified because which one was it?
It was the Don Giovanni in Washington. I enjoyed it. I mean, I went. Evan Rochester is a good friend of mine, and I went with his friend Ellen Marcus. I don't know if you know her.
Okay. No,
but
I don't.
We went to Washington principally to meet his daughter.
Yes.
Who is a tiny thing now. She's born in the fall, I guess.
Yes, she's beautiful. Yeah.
And then we had the added attraction of Don Giovanni at the opera.
Oh, I'm so glad you got to see it.
But it was a good cast.
I'm a Kyle Kettleson, and I've known each other and sung together many times. He's a good friend of mine, and I just think his comic timing is brilliant, and he's a lot of fun to work with.
He was sensational. Mm-hmm. That was an amazing performance from him.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Really.
Yeah. Boy, we're gonna look back at these conversations, right, and go, oh, the good old days when you could see opera on. Oh, the good old days when you could see
old days. Yeah.
Live opera, yeah.
I know. So how are you doing with all of this?
Because we're all very busy. We've been producing the magazine remotely, and so we just closed July. Okay. So that we signed off on the proofs today, and then we start August the day after tomorrow.
Wow, so you're that far ahead.
This is the same schedule. The only difference in the schedule was because we felt this was coming in March, especially our production director, Liz Diggins, pushed us to prepare for working at home. And also we put through things a little bit early. And the June issue was frankly, I think the most difficult we'll have all year, because we had 8 pages we had to remove. There were 6 pages on Tobias Ficker's new opera. There were we had Cincinnati covered in there, and those cancellations happened while we were in production. We can adjust the text. I mean, obviously, if we're celebrating the centennial of Cincinnati Opera, that doesn't change. But I think to do an interview, a lengthy interview with Tobias and his husband about a new opera that is not going to be done at least for another year didn't seem to be the best use of our resources. So those changes, we're fortunate that we were able to make those. And, you know, our next issue is the one that we're closing now is dedicated to Salzburg. So who knows what's going to happen there.
Right.
You know, it's just we have to roll with the punches. It's happening to everybody. And
if Salzburg actually does have a few performances, which I just read about today, would that be something that you would fly to go? Would you feel comfortable flying?
I would not fly because I usually don't fly to Europe. I was planning on flying this summer because of the centennial.
Okay.
I think at this point, we have critics on the ground in Europe, and it would be much better to have them do it if they can.
Okay.
The person who's covered Salzburg for us the past couple of years was based in Berlin. Now he's based in Munich. So that's a lot cheaper flight than me coming from New York.
Right, for sure.
Well, what do you do with the content that you've had to take out? I mean, what are you filling it with?
We've got a couple of new things that we've worked on in books and recordings, especially. We'll start in the July issue. There's two parts to that question. The departments in the back of the book, because we don't have any reviews. Those are done as of June.
That's what we wanted to know, yeah.
An average of 10 to 12 pages from all over the world every issue. So we're trying to expand the book section, and in addition to doing a book review, we're doing reading lists so that there are in the July issue 5 different experts pick their favorite Mozart book. So we have Peter Sellers, Barry Kosky, Jane Glover, James Conlon, talking about a book that was useful to them in their study of Mozart. Then in recordings, in addition to the normal 5 or 6 pages we've done 2 things. One is called Best of the Best, where we pick one opera and pick 5 moments from that opera and have a bunch of critics just tell us what the favorite one is. And they're very interesting. The first one is Bohème, because we thought that would be the easiest with the most performances available. So there are people who loved Pavarotti doing Che Chiedi Domanina, but then there are people who liked Mi Chiamano Mimì from Claudio Muzio. You know, so it's a kind of a nice mix, and we're going to have a Spotify playlist to back that up. Then another thing we're doing, which is a little bit longer, more protein, as I refer to it, we're going to do something called Unstandard Repertoire and pick a composer who's famous for, say, one opera, like Saint-Saëns and Samson Delilah, or Korngold and Todestadt, and do a roundup of the available recordings of his or her other operas that are worth listening to while we have time to listen. Yeah. The other thing we're doing is in the front of the book, we started with June, commissioning short pieces on what the current impact is of the pandemic, because we are not in a position, nor is anybody, to make a prediction as to what's going to happen even 5 minutes from now. But the first person to write for us was Anthony Roth Costanzo, who, as you know, is also a producer. And he did 2 pages in the June issue on what he thinks the post-pandemic landscape might look like in terms of opportunity. You know, are there different ways now to connect to audiences?
I read that. I loved it. It was a great piece. I'm glad you did that. Thank you.
We've got one coming up in the July issue, which just closed, from Richard Fairman on what the impact is specifically in the UK. Okay. Because there are companies there, it's a model that we don't have in the US anymore, of touring companies. You know, how are they going to continue to go on, in addition to the summer festivals and the companies in London? Then in August, which is an issue that's focused on education, Stephanie Blythe is going to talk about what it is like to teach people remotely. And that, to me, is a fascinating subject, because I can't tell whether or not that particular component in our world is going to stay. But obviously, I mean, not in terms of performance. This is in terms of teaching.
Yeah, I know. I'm such a hands-on person, though, when I teach. And I have a hard time thinking, how is that going to translate to online? And you can't hear the overtones. You can't hear.
Right. There were a good friend of mine's teaching, and he said, the biggest question I have that I cannot answer is, what Fach do you think I am? What music should I actually be working on rep-wise? And he is, in his mind, how in the world can I tell that over a Zoom meeting? I need to hear you in a space to hear exactly what this voice does. So it's a difficult medium. There are possibilities there, but I think it's difficult for those kinds of questions.
I think that what my understanding is that if a teacher is working with a voice he or she already knows, then I think the problem is going to happen if this is still going on in September and you have new singers meeting new teachers. That's where you get into really tough territory. Because for me, for example, one of the things, this is a judgment call, but it's something that I found in competitions, for example, you can tell nothing about a singer's integrity from Zoom. You can't tell how he or she enters the room, how they treat the accompanist, all that stuff, which is part of his or her understanding of the music and understanding of what it's like to communicate that music to an audience. That's tough. I mean,
subtlety behind, right, are lost.
Yeah.
So, and we see all this online content going on.
Mm-hmm.
Is Opera News going to review online content?
At this point, no. I mean, I think it depends on what it's supposed to be. Because if it's something that is developed specifically for online, maybe. But I will tell you that we tried with 2 pieces at the beginning of this process and were asked not to review it by the presenters. So that, I mean, we wanted to because I thought it would be interesting. And also the turnaround is obviously very different because we wouldn't be reviewing something and then coming out in a monthly magazine. It would be coming out right away. I think in terms of reviewing what for me is a picture of a performance, I don't think that that's quite fair. I think at this point, I'm saying no. I mean, my column in the July issue is about the Met Gala. And that was, to me, an emotional experience. That wasn't something I certainly felt comfortable reviewing because I would have ugly cried,
Yes, I know. We asked that question because there are some recordings I've heard that have added. I've listened mainly out of curiosity, but some of the recordings I've heard have added reverb. They've added all kinds of things to it, and I just was wondering, if those are reviewed, what is the responsible way of reviewing that? I mean, is that something that's brought up? Is it discussed? Is it?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think it would have to be, but you'd have to get as much information as you possibly could.
True.
At the beginning of it. I mean, the Met was, I think, very good about disclosing which performances were sung live, which were sung to pre-recorded tracks, which were done in pieces, the way they put things together. But I hope that the critics that we have, wherever they are going to be able to review live performances because that's what they're trained to do. And that's what I want them to do, and that's what they're trying to capture. What you try to do, or what we try to do in review of a performance, is capture a moment in time that is experienced by a number of people all at one time, but no 2 people hear it the same way. And that's what you try to give to the reader. I think, unfortunately, one of the things that happens with doing things online, it's a little bit like doing a movie. You're removing it. There's 1 degree removed from the actual person sitting in front of it. Whatever the connection is and whatever the excellence is, it's not the same. And I think that if it is to be reviewed, it has to be reviewed with that caveat and with those circumstances. But I agree with you completely about reverb and juicing things up and stuff like that.
And that visceral feeling, when the voice hits you when you're in the theater, you can't replace that with.
No.
So have you thought about, and here Carrie and I are being, like editors for you, but there are a lot of things that nobody talks about in opera magazines, such as vocal injuries, vocal illness, menopause. As a woman of certain age, I will not include Carrie in that because I am a woman of certain age. Things like breast cancer, cancers, things that singers have gone through. Have you thought about doing in the meantime, while we're waiting for opera to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be?
We have done stories on singers' cancers and on other injuries, and I wish I could remember the lady's name, but there was a woman, she created the role of Curly's wife in Of Mice and Men, and she came back to singing or to understanding singing after having had a stroke. So we did cover that. We covered, I don't want to get into anything too specific.
Yeah, well, we can, listen, this is not a live show, remember that.
It depends on the individual singer, and I think we are in discussions with someone who had the coronavirus now, and what that's like coming back, because I think that's something that belongs in this time. I think in terms of the other things you mentioned, for example, menopause, or that is potentially quite interesting. We've done childbirth a lot. I have not done childbirth myself, but it's something that people discuss in terms of how much time do you need before the baby is born, when do you come back. That gets talked about really frequently. It does not get talked about in terms of any kind of complications and postpartum depression, that sort of thing. So it's possible, but what I would like to do is the immediate question of the physical recovery from the illness. The other thing, which is going to be very difficult to put a marker on to commission an article, is the emotional.
Yes.
The thing about this in our industry, it's awful for everybody, but I can't think of another industry other than opera, and that includes opera magazines, where we're able to predict with a certain degree of surety where we will be 5 years from now, who we will be with, what restaurant we'll be eating, what comes up then, how much we're going to get paid, all that. I mean, we performed and wrote in the present time, but we always lived in the future. And right now the future has been removed from our lives. It's not that it's not going to come back. It's the idea of not knowing when. So it's like being thrown in jail and you have no idea how long the sentence is.
Yeah.
And that's everybody. But in this particular industry, especially for the two of you, because you're singing not just with the mechanics of your voice, but you're using everything inside as well. And it's not that you have to be cheerful every day to be able to sing, but uncertainty is something that is very difficult to sing through.
And depression.
Yeah, I mean, depression, I think it's rampant right now. And I think not a lot of those that feel comfortable in talking about it are, but I really wish there could be something in print for those that aren't comfortable in talking about it, so that they don't feel so alone. It's why, it's one of the reasons why Sandra and I started this, because I wasn't seeing content online that had information I wanted to know about. And I also wanted to say, you're not alone in not wanting to practice. You're not alone in feeling these immense emotions of loss. So,
yes.
So that I would love to see that in print. And I always wondered why October, because that's breast cancer month, because there are singers that have gone through breast cancer that it would be really fun to see an issue on that and how they dealt with it, how it affected their voice, if it put them through menopause. I mean, so I was just always curious if that was something that was difficult to do, to find singers that would talk about that.
Yes, to be honest. I mean, I can think of two that we talked about who did not want to go public because of the employment issues.
Yes.
There is a stigma attached to that. And I think even to run something without someone's name invites a guessing game, which I think is not fair.
Not fair.
But, it's tough because there are health issues and there's no reason that someone can't come back from those health issues. But so much in terms of women's health, and to a degree men's health, is tied up in the youth market. And once we've had a few miles on us, or there's illness or damage or whatever, people are less willing to make an investment. I think that's wrong, certainly.
You too.
But
that's why I talked about my vocal surgery.
exactly.
Not immediately after, but
no.
Once I knew that everything was okay, and I felt like I was in a position in our business that I could talk about it. And I thought people needed to see a face attached to what I went through, and to say that it's okay, you can come out the other side of it. All right. And I can't tell you how many people wrote me after I talked about it. So, you know, if I touch one life and help people, you know, so be it.
The story that had the most resonance, and I think one of the most important ones we've ever done, was when Patricia Rissette came out as a lesbian for the first time in the Opera News pages. And we had a little bit of pushback from some people on the publications committee and the board, nothing terribly significant. But I said that I didn't really care what the industry thought. Patricia had already taken that responsibility. I said I wanted that story to resonate with some girl in a dorm room reading an Opera News magazine and realizing that she was not alone in facing this issue internally. Now, since that was done, and I can't remember the exact year, I think it's like 2000, 2001, it's a long time ago. It's now something that people talk about all the time in the industry and out of it. And it's I can't believe now when I'm doing sound bites interviews with people I've never met before, they'll talk about my boyfriend, my girlfriend, you know, I'm gender fluid, whatever. That's all great, but I want to say on some level, do you realize how different it is since we first started doing these things? And I remember one woman, I can see her face, now I remember her name, but I'm not going to say it. She also was a lesbian, is a lesbian. And we got a panicked call from her manager saying I had to be taught, something had to come out of the article. And I thought, well, I got on my high horse and said, oh no, this is not, whatever. And so I took the call and he said, yes, this has to come out. And it was her age, not the fact that she was a lesbian.
Yes. Yay.
She said, no one to employ. She said, she can sing really well, but said people are going to think if they know how old she is, that she won't be able to sing that much longer.
Oh,
what is that? I don't understand this. I mean, I was raised by singers like Marilyn Horne, who told me, if you don't have a career that lasts this long, there's something wrong with your technique. So we better make sure your technique is solid. And having a career into your 60s was something that was a goal, was to be able to sing this long. And I don't understand why that's, I mean, for voices like mine, I don't come into my prime until I'm in my mid 40s, but somehow in this business, if I'm in my mid 40s, I'm already over the hill, but I sound better in my 40s than I did in my 30s. So none of that makes sense.
I feel like I'm singing better now in 50s than 40s. So
plus that doesn't even account for what we've lived through and the emotions that we can bring that sometimes are very different from, not saying that a 20-year-old has not lived a lifetime. Sometimes some 20-year-olds have in 20 years, but it brings an experience to the role. That's my Donna Elvira now is very different when I sang Donna Elvira in 2001. So
yeah, always sound like that.
I've been looking in the, I always get confused on the issues. We just closed July, so we've got obituaries in there for Arlene Saunders and for Rosalind Elias, who both sang really, really a long time. I mean, Ros made the Broadway debut when she was in her 80s, and she sang it really well. And then in the August issue, we'll have Gabrielle Bacquier and John McCurdy, who also went on for a long time. So if you know what you're doing, I mean, obviously there are certain things physically which change, but you know, I think if you know what you're doing, you can certainly go on for as long as you want to.
Yeah.
Now, I know we sound a bit like feminists, and I'm going to harp on a little bit, but we both read an article about you talking about women and women in the opera business. How do you feel that the role of women has changed in the opera business, not just singers, but women in general? And do you think that the hashtag Me Too movement, if you want to talk about it, has influenced any of that?
The Me Too, hashtag Me Too is specific to the way women are spoken to and treated. And I think that has affected change, and that's good. But that is something which is supported anecdotally, if you know what I mean, that specific instances can be changed. no, I don't think the industry has changed fast enough in terms of the inclusion of women in positions of authority, in positions of musical authority. I think the idea that the Met, for example, this is changing obviously, but taking that as an institution, which has been around the longest, how many female composers, how many female conductors? And I came from the theater, so when I was first in the opera world, when I worked in a summer stock company, all the accompanists, half the associates in a 9-week season, 2 or 3 of the conductors would be women. And that was not a big deal because it's, batons aren't heavy. Anyone can move. So,
that's great. Can we quote you on that?
Yeah, right? That's the hashtag of the day.
But I think it's very much connected to authority. In the fact that, we're looking at this country and, is the country ready for a woman to be president? Well, what does that mean? Why aren't they ready? It's because they're not ready to accept a woman in a position of authority within a patriarchy. It's mental.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we're looking at in terms of women being in positions of authority or power or planning within this industry. Certainly, I think Deborah Borda is an example for
I was going to use her, yeah.
Millions of people who look at what she's done with the Los Angeles Philharmonic and now with the New York Philharmonic and look at how she moved her institution out in front of the pandemic ahead of everybody else. I think she's absolutely a genius. And we did a big piece on her when she came back to New York. And she talked a little bit about what that's like, but I think she selected what she wanted for herself as a management position. That's what she wanted to go into, and she's done it very, very well. I mean, I would hope that more women are accepted as stage directors, as conductors, principally. Certainly, we see in a lot of orchestras that there's female representation. And in operas on stage, obviously, that's limited by what the characters are in the repertoire we're doing now.
Sure.
Well, but there's a sure, but why not, when we're looking at operas, if I may, and commissioning new ones, have some female stories or some gender non-traditional stories, because those stories deserve to be told.
Agreed.
So bless you. I mean, thank you, because a lot of people won't talk about this, and it's always on our mind. We talk about it so much, really. Yeah.
What about music critics? I grew up in a time where I knew who Martin Bernheimer was. I mean, I grew up with Tomasini and Anne Majette reviewing me. And then there seemed to be like a huge shift with critics turning into, especially with newspapers and online content. I feel like we lost a lot of good music critic reporters. And then it all went to bloggers, and some of those bloggers have now been published in some of the big publications. Where do you see the future of music critics now and reviewing?
Well, I've used this particular example when I speak to young artists when they ask if they should read reviews, and I said you have to consider the source. For example, and I asked them, have you ever fed a baby? Have you ever spooned food into a baby's mouth? And, I said, well, say you're dealing with feeding the baby applesauce. Now, if the baby spits the applesauce out, that doesn't make him or her a food critic. They've expressed an opinion, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's valid.
Right.
If the baby can take 1 teaspoonful and tell the mixture of McIntosh to Gravenstein to delicious apples, then you're a critic. So,
you are brilliant. Oh my gosh.
Expressing an opinion is really easy, and I think expressing a negative opinion is also really easy. And I'm not directing that at anyone in particular, but I will very often say to writers who are looking to come into opera news, I judge a critic by whether or not he or she can write an interesting, favorable review. Because anyone can write an interesting negative review by making it funny. Right. And again, I mentioned no names, but if you're taking a target of a performer or a composition or whatever, they can't defend themselves. I think you can certainly do a negative review and be supportive, understanding, not spread a whole lot of blame around. I mean, I think the worst thing you can do in the context of a live performance is blame the performer for whether or not it worked or didn't work, because you have absolutely no idea whether or not there were negotiations made in the course of rehearsal. And what particular move is that the lady or gentleman on stage is doing and is being paid to do. So you can't assign blame as far as that goes. I think you can blame the person that paid to put it on and then take it from there. But to a larger point, we're looking at media in the United States especially, and in the world, but in the United States, it's not just music critics, it's everything, because it's the incredible shrinking arts section. We wrote that piece in Opera News at least, I want to say it's 12 years ago, about what the reduction was at that point. And I remember the first time I went to Opera Colorado, which was not when the new Opera House opened, so it was before that, there were 3 full-time music critics in that city. 3.
It's amazing.
There are now none. And that was with an opera company that was making a major investment in the local economy by working on building the Ellie Calkins Opera House. I look at that in terms of who, someone like Martin Bernheimer, who just died within the past couple of months, but Martin trained to be a critic from the time he was in his 20s. And he was really good right from birth. I mean, he was someone who had a really terrific way with a phrase, but he also backed it up with formidable knowledge. I think there are a lot of people now who are just able to get coverage because the coverage is not based on, or the acceptance of that coverage, I should say, is not based on whether or not it's good or bad. It's how many hits you get, how many followers.
Right. Wow.
And I'm at a loss as to how to reverse that particular trend. But in light of what our lives have been changed by, looking at the internet, if you can say that, so much that's out there is not vetted, it's not accurate, it's not really good information. We're seeing it now with the coronavirus, and crazy things that circulate. And the same thing happens with performance reviews, you know? And then I'm beginning to think now, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I look at it in terms of marketing and the idea that now marketing is selling tickets in a much more powerful way than the critical community did. Because it used to be, when I was, I'm a lot older than both of you, but when I was in high school and starting to go to the theater, Clive Barnes with the New York Times could open a show or close a show if the review was good or bad. Now you can have a favorable review in the Times and the show will close. Or you can have a bad review in the Times and the show will run. People are just not making decisions based on those reviews. I still think it's important to have critics. I think it's important to make that part of the conversation. And I think to extend the world of the performance into the world around us. I think it's perfectly legitimate to look at what is commissioned in terms of new work and make that part of a review and say, why this story now? Why, if this story is about woman X, is it, pardon me, directed by a man, conducted by a man, designed by a man? Maybe the person who zipped her up into her dress is a woman. But if you're telling a story from a woman's point of view, why wouldn't you have other women come in there? It's the same gaze we see in the gay world. You know, the idea that people used to get medals pinned on them if they were heterosexual playing gay people because it was such a stretch for straight people to pretend they were gay. Now you're seeing plays where gay actors are playing gay roles, and that makes a big difference, I think, in terms of the way that conversation settles beyond that casting issue and moves into the larger issue of what the story is that they're trying to tell.
Truth, maybe, and that's what this pandemic is all about. Ultimately, unfortunately, all the people who have lost lives, it's horrible. But maybe now that instead of all this false news and false advertising and false social media, maybe now this is a time to wipe the slate clean and to start with more facts.
I hope.
Really insist upon that, you know? I hope so. I am tired of people speculating and wondering and putting fear. And that's why Carrie and I started this, the fear and reading everything that we read. The uncertainty is worse than the truth. I think. We both.
Yeah. I mean, Sandra and I were talking today, and it was actually one of the questions that we had put on our list for you. Because some days I wake up and I have a lot of hope and I think, yay, I can't wait for the business to come back. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but I hope it looks like what it was before pre-COVID. And then I have other days questioning, was my Donna Elvira performance on March 11th, the last at Washington National Opera at the Kennedy Center, is that going to be the last time I am on stage singing opera and doing what I love? I don't know. I mean, different days are different feelings. I was wondering how you felt about it, or your emotions on this, on what the future of opera looks like.
Oh, I mean, obviously I think about it every day, and I'm fine until I'm not, and then I'm fine again.
Yeah.
You have to accept the fact that this is not a steady progress in either direction. You know, we are up and down because I'm responsive not only to what I'm thinking and feeling, but also talking to other people, you know, making a phone call or a FaceTime with a friend and realizing that perhaps someone's picture on this is a little bit bleaker than mine or a little bit less bleak. And one of the things that we've learned is who are the people in our lives who are really important to us.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's just so emotional sometimes.
Of course it is.
And Carrie's not
that just got to me.
You said Carrie is, and I said Carrie is what?
Carrie's not really been able to sing much because she's in an apartment in Nashville. Mm-hmm. Well, she hasn't sung at all, actually, because neither of us have. I haven't been able to, just because mentally and emotionally I haven't been able to, and Carrie as well. And then she's in an apartment building.
Mm-hmm. And everybody's here.
Everybody is there working from home. I mean, I'm in the middle of a forest, so the deer love for me to sing.
Exactly.
And the goose and the geese.
But emotionally, I can't do it. You know, mm-hmm. I was asked to sing on the Met Gala, but I said, I'm sorry, I am not ready to do that. And maybe that's selfish of me, but
gosh, sorry. That just like hit me. We haven't cried on an interview yet.
No, we haven't. So
clearly the externals are troubling, you know, in terms of not being able to make the noise you want to make. My advice would be, if you can do it, to pay attention to what's inside and take yourself, whether it's through reading more, writing more. I mean, I don't think necessarily you can watch as many Netflix series as you want to, but I think if you have thoughts about this and other subjects, write them down, because you never know when you'll be able to unpack those.
That's beautiful. That's a great idea. Really
That's
beautiful.
Great.
I think we're just vocally doing it. We're verbally doing it. And
right. The thing is that it's great if you can talk to a friend about it, but I think if you write it down, whether or not anyone ever reads it, Edgar Vincent used to have this wonderful advice to his clients. I don't know if did you work with him?
Oh yeah, I sang for him.
Yeah, well, Edgar said to me at one point, he was talking to a client and said, so I said, the review is bad. What you do is take the paper, write the letter, write everything you feel.
I know where you're going with this.
Don't mail it. The next day, throw it away.
I heard a different version of that. That involved the toilet.
Oh. Know that version.
Right, but his point was express it, but you don't necessarily have to share it. And I think that's what's so interesting about the emotional lives of singers, because you can feel whatever you feel through the filter of these wonderful composers, and you get to share with thousands of people at any one time.
Right.
And that is a terrible loss when you're not able to do that. But write it down, read it, think it, respect it, honor it, make sure that what you feel now, you'll be able to go back to, or someone else will be able to go back to.
True. It's true.
That's brilliant. That's good advice also for the young artists. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For the young kids out there right now that are struggling in many ways more than we are. I mean, what can we tell them right now? You touched on that.
It's really tough, because I think that so many people now, because of the way young artist programs have changed in the years that I've been observing them, is that it is possible to do college, graduate school, artist diploma, young artist program. So essentially it's like living at home till you're 31 or 32 years old. You don't have to really worry about much of anything. You're part of a group and you're part of that particular herd. But I do think that a lot of them are facing the uncertainty that, say, actors face all the time. Not cosmically, like when is the industry going to come back, but any actor over the age of 15 or 16 deals with unemployment and deals with the constant, audition rejection syndrome. I think for singers, especially if they're in an atmosphere where they're trained very supportively and one-on-one, that becomes very difficult for them. So I would say stick it, because you're an artist. You're not an artist because you're making noise. You're an artist because of the way you see the world. And the way you see the world is what you're sharing with people, not the noise. Because anybody can make noise. And talent, I think, even if you want to say that that talent is a beautiful voice, that's an accident, like having red hair or being left-handed or being double jointed. What you do with that talent is what makes you an artist. And you're an artist whether or not you're singing. Because it's about how you receive that. And that's what people expect from an artist, is that we will hear and see and understand things differently because someone paints it in a certain way, composes it in a certain way, sings it in a certain way. I mean, certainly.
So beautiful. You are so eloquent. I mean, I knew this before, but wow, you truly have lifted our spirits today. I feel so much better.
I could totally hug you right now. If we were allowed, I would.
Really? I mean, I know we've talked a lot in the past, but this I think so many people are going to feel immensely better by listening to what you have to say. Really, I mean, it is very touching. Sorry.
No, it's great. So how did you come to love the opera world? Was there a performance or a singer that hooked you?
Yes, I can give you, it's a two-part answer, because I was maybe immune to the disease, as they say, and then I was hooked. First opera performance, and like a lot of kids of my generation, I saw opera on television in little dribs and drabs on the Ed Sullivan Show or the Bell Telephone or whatever. I was not particularly interested in it. My parents were not fans of opera, but they respected it, and they respected classical music. And the first classical music performance I went to, I can't pronounce his first name, but Horzowski, the Polish pianist, played a benefit at our grammar school auditorium when I was in 5th, 6th grade, I forget. And I did not want to go because it was the first time that, whatever it's called, a Charlie Brown Christmas, whatever that television special.
Oh, yeah.
That was for the first time. I said, no, I want to stay home and watch that. And my father said, you're going because you never know when you're going to have a chance to see him again. And I couldn't tell you anything he played. What I remember are his bows, because he was very tiny, with fat little hands and fat little fingers. And he made exquisite music. He was on the faculty at Curtis for years. But he would come out for his encores and stand next to the piano, put his hand on the piano, look at the audience, and they would keep applauding. And then he'd just turn his head like this. I said, really? And the people would go nuts. And it was the first time I'd ever seen the power of one person controlling what was my grammar school auditorium full of people. So flash forward to when I was a freshman in high school, a friend of mine had an aunt who worked at the Met, and it was the year 69, 70. So this was my sophomore year in high school, that no one was sure if the Met was going to come back because there was the big labor action. And in December, they rushed through a whole bunch of performances and dress rehearsals and things like that. And they were desperate to get people to go to them so people wouldn't be performing to an empty house, because it was something that was settled relatively close to when they were actually going up. So my friend got me into my first Met performance, which was the dress rehearsal of Tosca with Tibaldi, and I couldn't tell you that I had, you know, I remember them stopping the dress rehearsal for the Shepherd Boy in the last act because the Shepherd Boy wasn't singing terribly well, whatever. I don't remember anything about Tibaldi except the way she walked. And she had this, again, this sort of trick of when she came into Scarpia's apartment, she walked at a certain pace and then she stopped and started again. Almost like, you know, she was gathering her courage to come in. That I never forgot. And the fact that she had this, when she was not supposed to be a wonderful actress, and maybe she was not, but I do remember feeling the poise, the fact that she was ready to move before she moved, if you know what I mean. There was nothing awkward about her. She did herself really, really well. Fun. So at this point, I'm just humming along and loving the theater and all that stuff. And I never thought that much about opera till I was in, I had gone to a couple of performances at the Opera House. And the one that really hooked me was Daughter of the Regiment with Sutherland and Pavarotti.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And it's like the idea that she was at the top of her game, he was at the top of his game. They were entering a different phase of their career, but it was still, to this day, one of the most exciting performances I've ever seen. And we did an interview, or I did an interview, I should say, for PBS about Pavarotti on some anniversary. And I said that to me, when he went for those high Cs, it's very different than the way it is now, because so many people do that aria, and sometimes the Cs are squeezed a little bit, or they're pinged, or, you know, they have bells and whistles and lights and stuff. But with him, it was like watching someone go up for a layup at a basketball game. He knew where the hoop was, he knew where the C was, and every single one of them just landed, and there was no sense of strain or force.
The technique.
Exactly. So from that moment, you know, the first albums I bought with money in my part-time job in college were Dorothy Kirsten and Emily Gallicurci. So the rest is history.
Oh,
I love that.
I really want to hug you now. I mean, wow. I never got to hear any of them, you know, it was, you know. So we want to ask one more question, and that is about opera news.
Yeah.
And this is a question not just for opera news, this is for every opera house, really. What are you doing to attract younger viewers, younger subscribers, younger audiences?
Well, for us, it's not, we don't know how old they are when they come.
Okay.
In other words, when they buy a magazine subscription, or when they
okay.
come.
You don't know that info. Okay.
We don't know that. I mean, we have reader surveys, and I think the last one we did, the significant things, the reason you do those is because of advertisers, and the significant, we're skewing 50-50 male-female, higher percentage of passport ownership, because opera is a big motivator for cultural travel. So we had a higher percentage of passport ownership than travel and leisure. All those kind of stats that you can learn to rattle off.
Median age, I mean, we saw that it was, we saw one from 2016. That, and that the median age was 49. It was, you know, I mean, it's an older audience.
But I think that is in common with the way people get information, and the fact that we're a print publication first. We do have a website and we have a digital edition, but most people who get, I mean, most print magazines have stats like that in terms of the age. What I think the magazine should be, and what I've tried to do, is to make it a resource for what's best in opera. And I think that appeals to people in the industry and outside the industry. And I think that we want to look at not necessarily what's new, but what is of quality that's interesting. And some new ideas work that way, some new ideas don't. Obviously, we have a lot of performance reviews when performances are going on, and that's something which is has the youngest readership in the book. You know, when they go back there, I think it's because there are a number of people in the industry who want to see their reviews or their friends' reviews. I think in terms of what one does, and this is me, because I don't want to speak to opera companies right now. Yeah. I feel it's very important for us to have many stories within the magazine, So I think it's important to have men and women of color on the cover of the magazine, not just inside. I think it's important to have them tell their stories in a way that allows them to be comfortable about being honest about who they are. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to ask them about their private lives, because I think a private life is exactly that. But if there are certain things that a man or a woman feels comfortable talking about, then that's fine. We can look at including that. And clearly, in the case of someone who has a significant other that has been a part of his or her life for decades, that's natural to talk about. I don't think it changes what they do in terms of the mechanics of singing. I think it changes what they do in terms of the way they express themselves within an industry that's not necessarily supportive of that. In other words, it's been difficult for people to, believe it or not, I think it's been difficult for a long time for people to be openly gay within the opera industry, depending on what they do. Certainly, for managers and administrators, it's not been that much of a problem. But I think on stage, certainly, yes, that is something that people have shied away from for a long time. Now it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal from where I sit. But I do think that inclusion and also being able to I think that the key for me is that if you're going to look at this form and your audience, the form being opera, and you're in the United States, I think you want to support American singers, just the way if you're in Canada, you want to support Canadian singers, not above all others. But I do think that what one wants to do, what I feel, is if I had nothing but straight white people on the cover of the magazine for 12 months running, what does that say to people that might pick it up?
True.
I don't belong here.
Yeah.
So I think that there are so many wonderful singers that have so many wonderful stories we haven't even begun to tell. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
So,
rapid fire.
Okay.
Ready for these?
Are you ready?
Okay, so you are going to be a guinea pig for us.
Cool.
Because we had been doing, as an homage to James Lipton, we had been doing his questions, but we felt that his ghost might start to come after us. So we have come up with our own list of 14 questions. So you are a guinea pig.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
What is your favorite hobby?
Reading.
What hidden talent do you have?
I'm an excellent housekeeper.
Ooh, I love that. Okay.
What one thing does nobody know about you?
My first job was taking care of basset hounds.
Really? Oh, I love dogs.
Well, and the basset hounds were almost as big as I was, and certainly a lot stronger.
That's beautiful. See, now this is interesting.
Okay. What one word answer do you think of when I say music or opera? Can you sum it up in one word?
Exaltation.
Cool.
What do you listen to other than opera?
Pretty much everything. I mean, jazz, orchestral music, chamber music. I don't know if you are Spotify account people. I do the Spotify playlist for us, so there's a whole mix on there. I mean,
Cool.
Perry Como, Bing Crosby, Randy Travis, Stevie Wonder, in addition to all the opera singers.
Stevie Wonder, that's a name.
I love Stevie. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Stevie, we love you.
Cheers.
Who is your favorite singer or rock band, or do you have a favorite out there? Like, I don't know, Madonna.
Not her. I don't know if I've got a favorite. I mean, when I was growing up, I think, and was listening to it a lot, I think there was a group called The Association. That gives you an idea of what I was like as a young teenager. I was sort of missing the Doors and listening to The Association.
Okay.
Oh, hey.
I think in terms of people who are performing now, I think the person who intrigues me the most is Lady Gaga.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Lady Gaga and Pink. Do you feel that time is flying right now? Time is flying by or standing still?
Both.
Okay, I really want to ask this one. Your best beauty tip.
Soap and water.
Most useless talent that you have?
I'm double jointed.
Ooh.
Oh, Gary and I are like,
Can we, like, Gwen Hughes Jones, tenor, good friend of mine, can pull his thumb all the way back.
do you have a thumb like that? Do you have?
Yeah. The thing is, the reason it's useless, I'm not double jointed in all 10 fingers. I'm double jointed in only 8. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 Wow. But your thumb is like ours.
Okay.
I used to be able to crack my ankle at will, but I can't do that anymore.
Okay.
Well, this is when I was in grammar school and I could crack it when we were in chapel.
That's the best.
Plethora of information.
Yep.
3 words that best describe you.
Friend, brother, son.
Cool.
That's beautiful. You're invited to a dinner party. What would you bring pre-COVID, post-COVID? Yeah.
Pre-COVID, I would bring a bottle of really good red wine. Post-COVID, I would bring 3 bottles of really good wine.
You are invited to my house whenever you would like.
Anytime. Once this is all done, come on over.
Mm-hmm. What is a fashion trend that you do not understand?
Do tattoos count?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I don't mean discrete tattoos, but like inking, the whole body.
Like a sleeve. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, don't get it.
Okay. All right.
Carrie came up with this one, but I have to ask it because it's really brilliant. And I'm going to say chapeau to Carrie here. What's a song that always gets stuck in your head?
Smile.
Oh, that's nice.
Smile. Heart is breaking. Smile. Ever so near, especially Judy Garland.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I love this question. You don't have to answer it, but I enjoy a very good curse word every once in a while. So do you have a favorite curse word?
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
The very best curse word ever. That's Carrie's favorite.
My favorite. That's the best.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's the end of our questions. So you were a guinea pig. I hope you enjoyed them.
I did, very much so.
Yeah. And we enjoy talking to you.
I know, absolutely.
I will speak for myself, but I'm sure for Carrie too, that we feel so much better after talking to you. Really.
Well, I'm better talking to you. And certainly you've both given me a lot of pleasure on stage. And that's why I do this, because I get to listen all the time.
Well, hopefully you get to listen to us again soon, live.
Okay.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for what you're doing. Bye.
Bye, Carrie.
Bye. Bye.
Very, very dear friend F. Paul Driscoll asked me to sing for him. I recorded it a couple years ago out on my back patio, but I can deny F. Paul nothing. So I'm going to sing Smile from Modern Times. Of course, the music is by Charlie Chaplin and the words by John Turner and Jeffrey Parsons. Here's Smile. Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you. Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness, although a tear may be ever so near. That's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just do da da dee do dum ding da dee da do da do da do da do do da do do da ya do da da ye dee da 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 dee da 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 dee do da da you find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Good night, everybody. Keep smiling, keep believing, keep taking care of yourselves and staying home when you can. Always wear a mask and always smile underneath it. Take care, friends. Bye.
How many times have we had interviews go out there and we're like, no, I didn't say that.
Didn't say that. Mm-hmm.
I really didn't say that, but yeah. And I still have in my brain one of the best interviews that I ever had was with you. You are such a great interviewer.
That was really, really good interview.
One of the best interviews I've ever given, I think.
Office, but okay, this is something for young people, if I may, because I'm going to be talking Promethean artists on Wednesday.
Oh, I saw that.
I can say that one of the reasons why Sandra is such a good interview is that I've interviewed her twice, once for print and once live. She is so well prepared. Not in terms of knowing what my questions are, but in other words, knowing how she feels about the subjects and having gotten her thoughts in order so she's ready to answer. It's like showing up for rehearsal ready to sing. Show up at an interview ready to talk about what needs to be talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do your homework. That's what this has taught us. You know, do your homework. Read about the people. And Carrie and I have learned so much. We were talking about this. We have learned so much about everyone that we've interviewed because we've done all this research. We've gone on Google. We have read about everybody. We've read about you. And then also hearing your insights, then we can ask more insightful questions, you know? And I think that that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear, so, F. Paul, how are you doing during the pandemic?
Yeah, one laugh after there, actually.
Yeah. And that's not interesting.
Day drinking.
Day drinking, yes. 3 bottles of wine. Yes. Thank you, because it is important, and young artists, I think, skip that step oftentimes. They just show up and think that just their presence is enough, and it's not.
When has that ever been enough? Oh my gosh. Wow. We grew up in the wrong generation.
Well, it's a weird thing because, you know, with the sound bites, for example, for a lot of them, it's the first significant interview that they've had with the first photo shoot, all that jazz. And there's some people, Ashley Emerson, the soprano, still give mentally an Ashley Emerson award to sound bites because she was over and done with in 25 minutes because she was so well prepared. I got the quotes. She knew what she was talking about. She was in to talk about 2 things. We did great pictures. And there's some, it's got, I mean, and she's very talented. It's got nothing to do with her being the smartest person in the world or the best singer in the world. It has everything to do with how well prepared she was. And the fact that she knew that this was my job and this is where her job came together with mine. Some other people just show up and I ask a question like, you know, well, who's going to be conducting that? oh, I have no idea. It's like, okay, let me know how the rehearsal goes.
Gary, I mean, seriously, it is so important. That and your word in this business is so important. If you say you're going to have something to somebody, an email, if you're going to respond to something, if you say you're going to have it to them by Wednesday, have it to them by Wednesday.
And also be on time. That's the only other thing.
Sure, be on time.
Be on time.
It's so important. Well, there you go. So that's what you have to do. Thank you. We don't want to keep you too long.
Oh, no.
We really appreciated it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we see you soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you done yet?
Rude.
Ah. He loves you. Ah.
I love this.
That is probably my favoriteest. Wait, what did we say?
Ooh, come to mama.
We love you. We love you so much.
We love you so much.
I think Brooklyn Gin is probably my favorite.
Delicious, and I can't get this to you, can I?
I don't think so.
I can't send anything fun to you.
Carrie.
Stop looking at the. Oh.
Can we just talk about that right now? I have never, ever had roots like that.
That's bad.
It looks so bad.
What happened like in a week? Like, oh my gosh, your hair grew really long in a week.
I think it's all the lung buckets, as my girlfriend Yvonne would say, it's the lung buckets full of fresh air that I got. It is bad.
Yeah, but you know, it's pretty though. It is pretty.
It reached critical mass. That's what my husband would say. It reached critical mass. You hear that boom. I mean, seriously, can you get a ticket for drinking and driving?
Yes. Yeah. DUI.
Can you really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. DUI on a scooter. DUI on a bike. On a tractor. On a horse. Welcome to Nashville, people.
What about skateboard? Skateboard?
Yeah. Any moving thing and you're drunk, you're in trouble.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.